Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they sipping pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick. With a forceful grip, they force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it, if news anchors informant to informing them there's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this, we courting ships important gifts. Of course it is, but extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks we ignoring, which informing this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricks. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? So, after show to the debate, was on Quantum Eraser's channel. I'll throw the link in the chat in a second if you haven't seen it. I'll also throw it in the description. It was about gravity. Obviously, neither one of the flat earthers think that the nonsense they say about concepts bending and stuff is real. So we have a special guest, none other than the infamous Bob from Globebusters himself. We're going to recap some of it. We'll read the chats. You don't have to super chat. If you do, it's much appreciated. And also, I'll check the PayPals at the end where you can send personalized messages. We'll make sure everyone gets gotten to. And without further ado, what's up, Bob?
Hey, Austin. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Fantastic job tonight. You did really well. And yeah, you were very much on point. And I think QE did a fantastic job moderating. He really impressed me.
So. I agree. Moderation was A1.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, it was interesting. And, you know, there were several points of contention, obviously, that I had with it. I was, you know, there were some points that they were raising that I just simply didn't understand what the point was. Like Arwen, for example, kept asking about, you know, show us a demonstration of magnetic field that having on gas, right? And it's like, I don't even understand the point of that, but it's really easy. In fact, Dan Dimension has several videos doing that when he's demonstrating the noble gases in the atmosphere. And it's really cool because he shows, you know, he subjects gas, like neon gas and the noble gases, to a magnetic field, and you can see very clearly how it has a heavy effect to it. So I'm not really sure, you know, what the point was or why they wanted that demonstrated, excuse me, but I will pull up a video and we will demonstrate that for them. But, you know, other than that, there were several other points, but we'll kind of go through them.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. I don't really know how this works that well. I'm assuming you should be able to screen share, though.
Yeah, I will be able to screen share, but first I got to pull up the Dan Dimension video.
You're good.
But, yeah, so cool. So what, you know, the thing that really kind of puzzled me was, you know, it's like Brian was automatically going after you like you were, you know, denying the effects of buoyancy and density. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people misunderstand about not only my arguments that I make all the time on Globebusters, but what you were saying tonight as well. And nobody is dismissing the effects of buoyancy and density. In fact, they are integral in this whole, you know, gravity argument. But, you know, all we're saying is that, you know, to deny that initial downward acceleration, which is absolutely there, measurable by gravimeters, demonstrable by gravity towers or density towers. There's a variety of ways. And the math, of course, in order to even figure buoyancy and density, you have to use the little g, or the 9.8 meters per second squared variable, to accurately predict the effects of buoyancy and density. So why that would even be a point of contention just puzzles me, because it's something that is simply there. And that's all you were saying tonight. And that's all I've ever been saying. It's like, look, up and down, they're absolute directions. Buoyancy and density, command most of the argument, but without that little bit of bias, that very weak bias, density and buoyancy become moot points. And that's one of the things that really disturbed me, that nobody seemed to be able to comprehend today.
I agree. And I was getting frustrated. I feel like I wasn't communicating it well or something. I was so frustrated. But do you agree that implicit in your claim, when you say it's just relative density alone, that you're saying that up and down are relative directions?
Well, up and down are not relative directions.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's the only time up and down would be a relative direction is if you were on a ball Earth or a globe Earth, which we're not. So,
Exactly.
But if we actually were on a globe Earth, then yeah, I'd say that they were relative. But since that's not the case, then no.
Yeah, so up and down are absolute directions. And if you're going to say that the cause of directionality is simply because of relative density, implicit in your claim, whether you know it or not, you're saying up and down are just relative directions. And that just makes no sense on a plane Earth. And that's what I was so confused with. It's like people don't understand the implications of their claims, I feel like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he didn't even want to entertain that. That was the whole thing. He wanted to go to this argument. And I wish somebody would, if anybody out in the chat has any idea what video, and I think maybe he was showing it tonight, but there apparently is a video that was done by Anthony Riley that supposedly it just shows buoyancy and density, where he pours some salt in something, right?
Yep.
And then concludes that relative density is a force out of that. I don't even want to believe that is actually what he's claiming, but if it is, it's absurd.
Yeah, I don't know that he ever said force, but yeah, he just puts an egg in water, adds salt, and then the egg rises, and he's showing what no one disputes, which is that a manipulation of density can affect directionality. We all know that. So that's what again, implicit in your claim basically is that it's a force, right? I don't know. It's kind of baffling, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And oops, there's that. Just a sec. So I'm finding this. Oh, here it is right here. I'm going to share my screen. Here in just a sec. Let me do this. So let's go share screen. And we'll go Chrome tab and let there be light. I don't know if I need to do the audio or not. Probably not. I'll just share that. All right. So you should be able to see this. Yes?
Yep.
All right. So another property of ionized gas in a magnetic field, right? So here it is. This is what Arwen kept asking to be demonstrated, was this right here. He takes a magnet, and that obviously that tube is filled full of, I think it's neon gas. It may be one of the other noble gases, but I think it's neon. And as you can see, it has a profound effect on that gas, right? And the plasma, everything that's happening to it. So it's all right there. And again, like I said, I have no idea why he kept demanding that, but it had something to do with your point. And also electrostatics will do the very same thing. And in fact, he's going to show this right here, because the Tesla coil, as most people know, you can see the electrostatics jumping off of it. So not only is there a huge electromagnetic field that's coming off that Tesla coil, but you can see the electrostatic field coming off of it as well. And it absolutely ionizes those gases and has a profound effect on them, right? So, and that was the whole point that we were making tonight, guys. Austin was saying that look, everything in creation is constructed from, no matter how far down you go, it is all made from charged particles, okay? So if it's made from charged particles, that means it has a polarity or a voltage static potential to it. And the Earth in and of itself has a static potential that ranges from 0 volts at Earth ground, and it goes up to roughly 100 volts per meter. And it goes up to, I think I measured it up to 50 kilometers or something like that, which gives you a static potential of 5 million volts in between, you know, earth ground and, you know, 50 kilometers. And who knows what it would be. Well, we could figure it out. If the firmament is in fact at 100 kilometers, which I think it is, then we're talking about 100 million volts of static potential. So there you have that. Right. So, you know, let me go ahead and stop the sharing.
Yeah, and another thing, did you, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, I just gotta call it the way it is. You know, like the first, he whistled past every single practical demonstration. So I brought up the Van de Graaff generator, and he didn't even offer rebuttal to it, right? And so, right, my point was clearly, well, the density has remained constant here, right? It's a controlled variable. The density doesn't change. All that has changed is the electrostatics, and it affects directionality. And he didn't even address the Van de Graaff generator.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't. And one thing that I sensed in there, and I really want to address this, guys, because this, you know, it bugs me, and I have to admit that I am a guilty party to this, you know, as much as probably anybody else. But there was a clear delineation of, you know, team ball busters versus team globe busters in there, right? And you know, people, a lot of the flat earthers, you know, the ball busters guys, obviously, they do not believe that there is any sort of downward acceleration. And to Austin and I and many other people in the community, to deny that is absurd. It is there, right? It's demonstrably there. It's measurably there. It's calculatable. Everything, you know, all of our science actually depends on it. So to simply deny that it is not there is absurd. But what I noticed is that, you know, QE and Nathan Oakley and all those guys have their fans in the QE's chat, probably more so than the Globebusters type of fans. And, you know, there was definitely a split down the middle of it. And it just seemed like nobody was really listening to the actual arguments being made so much as they were, you know, kind of rooting for their favorite team guy, you know?
I agree.
And yeah, and that's, you know, and that was really sad, honestly. And I was, you know, I was in there too, because I mean, I could not believe that Brian was just hand waving, dismissing all of these points that you were making, especially about the gravimeter. You know, the gravimeter is something that is absolutely bulletproof, guys. I mean, it measures a downward acceleration using laser interferometry, which is so precise. It's 10 to the negative 12, you know, precision, you know, measurement in this acceleration of this little ball that's inside of a vacuum. So it's completely evacuated. Therefore, density and buoyancy can have no place or no variable in that measurement. So when we actually set those things out there, like, I've never touched one, honestly, but when they take those out there and they put them down and they measure those changes in acceleration all around the plane, right? That's something that's very real, and it demonstrates that the acceleration is actually there. So I just think that, you know, people really need to look into this piece of equipment. And then another question I was getting with 10th Man, this guy's going, well, where do you see a gravimeter occurring in nature? And I'm like, what kind of a question is that? It's like, yeah. Seriously? What? Who would ask a question like that? Of course we don't see gravimeters in nature. Gravimeters is a piece of technology that has been around. Well, the technology that it uses, which is the laser interferometry, has been around since Michelson Gale, you know, Michelson Morley, Sagnac, going back well over 100 years. It is proven technology. It's used in all kinds of aircraft navigation. I mean, it's solid as a rock, and it's used. And these devices are not cheap. They're $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, right? And, you know, people are always quoting that back to me about the fiber optic gyro. It's like, oh yeah, fiber optic gyro, your $20,000 fiber optic gyro, you know, measured Earth rotation. It's like, no, it didn't measure Earth rotation. And that's something that I keep having to explain over and over and over again, because why people don't understand the technology and how it works and what it's actually showing us. And so that's why, you know, people really need to, you know, instead of being a cheering section, you really need to research and try and wrap your head around the technology that is actually being used here, because, you know, you may think that it's too difficult to understand, but it really isn't, guys. it's really quite simple to understand. And, you know, I give lectures on them on Globebusters all the time about how this stuff works. And it's because I think the community needs to know how this stuff works, so that, you know, when you get in a debate with ballers, that you can then sit there and explain to them, you know, first of all, how the fiber optic gyro was not measuring Earth rotation, but how we devised a method to conclusively prove that it was not measuring Earth rotation. And in fact, what it was most likely measuring was the rotation of the luminiferous ether.
And that's where I'm trip out too, right? And just to clarify, there's this misnomer that because I'm a Globebuster and Bob thinks this, that I must think this also. Well, no, actually, before Bob ever even reached out to me, I was saying this all over my Facebook. Jaron's a Globebuster. He isn't completely on board yet. So that isn't what it is, right? We both are just addressing and acknowledging the observable phenomena that's undeniable. Really, I think that's
exactly.
a self-protection, to be honest, right? So
yeah,
whatever.
it is certainly not a Globebuster team thing, because Jaron is not on board, not entirely. I mean, he understands it, but you know, Jaron is, you know, he's very skeptical, and rightly so. And I don't blame him for, you know, having his reservations. Iru, the same way. He's only about halfway on. I'm not exactly sure where Rodrigo is, but I know John the Morgile was pretty much 100% on board with this. David Weiss is 100% on board with this way of thinking. And again, I'm not trying to make a case that, oh yeah, us flat earthers are for this, you know, theory of gravity, therefore it makes it right. No, we're not saying that at all. What we're trying to do is we're trying to explain to you guys why we are convinced that there is a downward acceleration, and to get you guys to understand the technology that is in use that is allowing us to actually measure this and see what, you know, make precision observations on it. So, you know, that's really important to us. And I think this is important for the community, because otherwise, if we go out there and we, you know, honestly, guys, I have to say that, you know, Brian's ignorance of the operation and the theoretical operation of the gravimeter honestly was embarrassing. And that is not something that, you know, you want to fall under the scrutiny of you know, some baller that's going to sit there and make fun of him because of it. You know, I mean, it was really, really a poor showing. And, you know, like I said, this technology is not difficult to understand. So I would just ask that people please try and make it an effort to you know, get a comprehension, get a clue on how it works, because it's not that difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I don't, you know, just to be bluntly honest, I just don't understand how half the chat was content with hand wave dismissal. Isn't that the very thing that we constantly preach against? And we're like, we want practical demonstrations. Well, every time they got one, they then said, well, this doesn't happen in nature. Well, guys, practical demonstrations don't happen. They're practical demonstrations, dude, but they're based upon naturally occurring observable phenomena, right? It's just like this video I'm showing right here. This is clearly showing you that when you introduce electrostatics, it's going to affect the directionality of this object over and over, right? And so, like, what exactly is it that I'm missing? That's I'm genuinely confused as to what's not being understood here. So,
right.
Here it comes, boom, pops up. It's affecting the directionality objectively.
Absolutely. You know, and another thing that comes to mind, you know, on an observation like this was, there's a guy, I don't know if you know him or not, but there's a guy named Jake Gibson, who his channel was called Flat Earth Asshole. And, you know, Jake was doing really, really great work and everything, and he did great debates and good debunkings. Then all of a sudden one day he got into,
the end of the video too. What to do it with iron, hair, and wood.
Iron hair. Okay, hang on a second. Also, I'm talking to Zach really quick.
Yeah, later on
We're
in the video,
this video that he's playing now.
He just goes a little bit further towards the end.
Oh, okay.
He'll show it with metal, wood, hair.
Okay, Zach just said that the video that you're just playing, if you go towards the end, it shows it with iron, wood, and hair, you know, having the same effects. In other words, it doesn't necessarily need to be metallic or magnetic or diamagnetic, whatever. It works on pretty much any material, you know, and static electricity does work on any material. There's nothing that is immune to static electricity forces. Anyway, so getting back to what I was saying was, you know, a practical demonstration. There was a guy, Flat Earth Asshole, Jake Gibson, that came out and said, look, the AE map is ridiculous, and the reason is because the sun angles don't line up in the sky. You know, you obviously have an apparent position of the sun. Yeah, we get that. And so somebody in fact, it was Jaron. Jaron was like the second or third person to do it. Is we got one of those kind of semi hemispherical lenses, magnifying glass lenses, and put that above an AE map, and then ran a pen light over the top. And basically, what it did is you could see where the pen light itself was, and the pen light was representing the sun. But then when you looked at it from underneath that dome, it was in a different apparent position. And what was meant to be demonstrated there was the lens itself was meant to simulate or emulate the atmosphere, right? The lensing properties of the atmosphere. But Jake Gibson comes out and goes, "Oh, you guys are ridiculous. You don't breathe glass. Of course there's no glass over the top." It's like, no, you don't get the point. The point is that this is what the atmosphere is doing, and putting a magnifying glass, that half sphere magnifying glass, emulates what the atmosphere is actually doing. And that's just another one of those things that boggles my mind when people get hung up on things like that. When you're trying to give a legitimate example, obviously not the exact thing that's happening, but and it could be too. There could be a physical crystal dome up there. We don't know. But the fact is we do know that the atmosphere itself has lensing capabilities, and it does act like a lens. Anybody that's watched any of Rob Skiba's videos knows that for sure. So that's all I'm saying is, we have to come up with practical demonstrations like this. Do they exist in nature? Of course not. Well, not all of them. Some do, some may not. But does it gravimeter? Of course it doesn't. But that is in no way, a license to give you the opportunity to claim, really stupid stuff like, well, because a gravimeter doesn't occur in nature, it's not a valid scientific observation.
Right, and QE doesn't even necessarily fully agree, I don't think, but even him just being a non-biased moderator, when I objected, he had to uphold it because he wasn't specifying contention. I'm like, you realize it got so, I'm sure you noticed, it got so reiterative and circular, I couldn't even get to my next point, right? The whole point that I was trying to make was that, well, this is objectively measuring acceleration, the observable phenomena that cannot be denied. Do you agree with the efficacy of the technology? Because it's very intricate. And I couldn't get a straightforward answer. And that wasn't even right. The point was going to go off that, which is, well, they measure a fluctuation relative to location. And of course, we know the Earth has an electric field. It's electrostatic. So how fast it falls is changing, even if slightly, all over the Earth, right? We couldn't even get to that point because it just seemed like disingenuous hand wave dismissal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, frustrating. Bro.
Yeah, you're right. And, I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat and, Bill Wool says, we do know, Bob, rainbows, dog stars, etc., prove the crystal dome shaped roof. I agree with that 100%. And as many of you know, I'm a big believer in the firmament. I think there's a huge amount of evidence for it, not the least of which, of course, is the necessary antecedent to have gas pressure. If we didn't have that dome, then, you can't just have gas going out into the upper expanses of space, so-called, right? So that's just one thing that tells me there's definitely a dome over our head. Another thing is that everything seems to happen at 100 kilometers. So we've got the sprites and elves that seem to flatten out and discharge right at that 100-kilometer level, just like there's a plate there, a capacitor plate. Another thing that happens there is they claim there is some sort of a sodium layer that they can fire lasers at and actually get a persistent star emulation right at 100 kilometers. To me, that screams. It's not because there's a sodium layer there or anything like that. That screams that there is something actually physical there. And, I could go on, well, and I have for hours, citing off all these things. I think that definitely support the idea of a dome. But, again, guys, it's a preponderance of evidence, and that's all we really have to operate from. But at least we have a preponderance of evidence. Globe Earth doesn't even have that, guys, at all. So even though we're arguing and squabbling over gravity, whether it exists or doesn't exist, I have to tell you guys, as flat earthers, we need gravity just as much as the ball earthers do. Well, not just as much. They need it because they have to distort it into the idea that it allows planets to orbit the sun and the ISS to orbit the Earth. We're not making that claim at all. In fact, our demonstration of it, dictates quite the opposite. That the larger the mass, the less coherent the attractive field or gravitational field would actually become, and so that completely debunks the heliocentric model on this. But if we didn't have that, buoyancy and density simply wouldn't work at all, and then we'd go around floating around all over the place, because you just can't have nothing more than buoyancy and density. There is another factor that is absolutely mandatory to make this work.
Yeah, and like, dude, literally none of the points were addressed. So how do you see a fluctuation in acceleration relative to your location on the Earth, right? You're going to have to point out some type of actual flaw with the technology or methodology of the gravimeter itself. This was not done. And of course you cannot do, it's a bulletproof technology, right? And all it's doing is demonstrating a change in the acceleration, which no one in their right mind disputes the observable phenomena of downward acceleration. It's just measuring the change in that relative to its location. So if you can't actually challenge the efficacy of the technology, what you're effectively doing is hand wave dismissing it. And that's what he did, saying, do you see a gravimeter in nature? That's the fallback default to hand wave dismiss. And I'm just going to be bluntly honest. The reason that people do this is because they've gone out and they've spoken very vocally about there's nothing else other than density and seeking equilibrium, relative density and buoyancy. And so they don't want to walk it back. And then certain people, it's not even that you have to walk it back, because you weren't wrong about that, right? You weren't wrong about that. It is relative to density, but it isn't the entire thing. And it's very frustrating. We had the Van der Graaf, which shows you introduce electrostatics, it changes directionality. That was walked past. The gravimeter measuring very intricate with interferometry, showing the change in velocity and the acceleration, that was walked past. Then showing that vapor was affected by magnetism was walked past, as if vapor isn't gas. And then somehow when you can't see it anymore, the phenomena changes with no actual foundation to make that point. So I guess I'm just confused, right? And then we introduce incoherent mass, as you say. It gets bigger, it's disproportionate pull, it's actually weaker. We show it's constantly attractive on both sides of that pole. It's attractive. We know the Earth is an incoherent magnet because it's inherently electrostatic, which are, just different modalities of the same thing. Like Ken Wheeler says, right? Two sides of the same coin. It's like water, or like H2O. You got the liquid form, you got the vapor form, you got the ice form. Dielectricity is tied in with magnetism. This was walked past as well. And so then I asked him to specify contention. Exactly what matter is it that you're saying isn't electrostatic? I got no answer. So it's very perplexing to me that someone could have watched that without bias and said that I just got dismantled. I don't understand it, right? Like I can understand, I need to look into this more. I don't fully understand what's going on or what you're saying. But to just say that, like I provided no practical demonstration, that's patently false, right? And then to say that like he rebutted with any form of substance would also be false. And this isn't, I think we all need to put our big boy pants on, right? This is intellectual exchange. We can disagree without like throwing hands, right? This isn't like flat earth war to the death, right? But like, we need to continue to explain observable phenomena. We don't need to sit here on our hands and just like reiterate and regurgitate the same things over and over and over and over and over. I think it's very detrimental. And that's actually what the globe earth side does, right? They just regurgitate academia. They say the same things over and over, and they have the arrogance of this. Well, Nathan Oakley's a very smart individual. QE's a very smart individual. They're very good debaters, right? They make very solid, valid points and arguments against the globe earth. So these people that have listened to them, heard them for a long time, they're effectively doing what the other side does, where it's like, well, I'm just going to say what the person I look up to for my opinion has said, and I'm not going to venture outside of that. And it's frustrating, bro. I don't like that. I think we don't need to like confine ourselves to limited explanations just so that we can disprove the globe. The globe earth is stupid. It defies physics, right? Like we should move forward, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, guys, we're on the same team here. We really are. And it's just unfortunate that there is such, animosity. And like I said, I'm just as guilty of it. And, and part of my problem is because, I get attacked a lot. Recently, I don't know, many of you guys, I'm just going to mention this really quick, and then that's going to be the end of it. But something that really, really torqued me off very recently was.
Hey, Bob, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Just continue, bro.
Okay, sure. No problem. So something that recently just happened, guys, is so Arwen went on a show, and he was talking about how he had heard some rumor, and he actually started crying about it on his live feed, that somebody was passing around a rumor that I said that child rape victims had no soul, which of course is an absurd claim to make. I think I know the source of that. It came from some guy named Tony, who I don't know who he is, but whatever. So Arwen, for whatever reason, his dislike for me, he needs to go and he starts spreading these rumors. And it's like, I don't know why. Obviously the guy doesn't like me, but to slander somebody to that level, to accuse them of, saying that child rape victims, have no souls and basically deserve it is way over the top, guys. So, I have a problem with that, and, I don't like to hear it. And frankly, it was allowed on the other side, and it just pissed me off. So what do you do? Que sera? But that's all I'm going to say about it. But, there is no reason to drop to that level of criticism or hatred or anything. We're supposed to be on the same team. And, if we're going to actually fight and get this dirty over something that, we have excellent evidence for, and it is not by any means dismantling the flat earth argument. In fact, what we're trying to do is fortify the flat earth argument, because, as I said on Globebusters, several times, it's like, this is something that we need to be able to take the Globers on their own terms, right? They say that gravity does, such and such and such. It's mass attracting mass. They say there's two different kinds of gravity. They've got their Einsteinian version. They have their Newtonian version. Austin and I are telling you that neither one of those is correct, and we don't subscribe to either, and we're not pushing either one of those either. But we are saying that in its purest form, there is a downward acceleration, right? And that is where we start. And that is where we need to take the argument from and go forward with it. But to simply hand wave, dismiss it, and say it doesn't exist is absurd, and it makes us look really stupid.
Yeah, and I think it got lost because of the reiterative, just instinctive fighting of the point that was going on. But here's the point, guys. The gravimeter, that's a bulletproof technology. He didn't specify any contention. There can be no specified contention, right? Because I'm looking at this without bias. I wouldn't have cared to admit I was wrong, right? I would need sufficient answers for the questions I've posed. That's why I'm where I'm at. So here's the problem, right? You're going to have to explain how we're seeing different accelerations all over the world relative to the location. Now, how can that be explained? Is the density changing? Well, it's objectively not. It's in a vacuum chamber. So what is the explanation, guys? Because if it was just random, then if you kept dropping at the same place, that would just constantly change, right? So you're moving it around, and so we're explaining this phenomena. We're not, and the other side is just acting like it doesn't exist. That's not sufficient. That isn't a good tactic. So when a globe earther hears you and they're a little bit more knowledgeable, and then they just hear you say, well, gravimeters aren't in nature, they're just going to be like, okay, I'm out of here, right? Because you're not even giving a sufficient explanation. The variance in the electric field would perfectly explain the phenomena. And of course, we have different types of materials in the ground itself, like areas that have more prominent, concentration of lodestone and magnetic materials. So that's kind of the point here. The gravimeter is showing a phenomena, and it's showing it with great detail, and we should probably try to address it, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because it's not hurting us. It is not going to end the flat earth argument to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, there is a downward acceleration force. Great, whatever. But it is not what the ballers are claiming that it is. Not even close. And we have really good analog demonstrations. Zach Goodtime for All's demonstration of that with, I believe it's called Is Gravity Incoherent Magnetism? That video is an excellent demonstration of exactly what we're talking about here. And, for what it's worth, guys, we came up with that video. Zach and I talked about that, but the theory of it came from a friend of mine who is a PhD in electrical engineering and a professor at a very prestigious school over in Europe. And so it's not like this is even outside of mainstream physics. They know this, they totally get this, but they are also aware to the degree that these arguments are being distorted. There are actually legitimate scientists out there that can see the scientism creeping into the world and taking over. Fortunately, my friend with the PhD in electrical engineering is not one of those people, and he has been a fantastic help to us. in actually trying to unravel what is going on with this discrepity. And that's all we want to do. That's all we want to do is figure it out, you know. But as far as all the other evidence, come on, let's face it. The Globers have no evidence. There is no case. There's no preponderance of evidence. There is no curvature. There is no R. They got nothing. They have got nothing to prove. And all they can do is ad hom. All they can do is, you know, make media hit pieces, you know, delete our channels, send agents in by the dozens. I mean, you guys know what they're doing. I mean, this should be pretty obvious, right? So it's pretty clear to me who's got the winning argument here. And you know, the last thing we need to be doing is turning on each other, because that's going to destroy us faster than anything.
Yeah, I agree. So like all the malicious ad homs and stuff, like that's why I just stopped reading the chat, right? Because it's just ridiculous. And this is what it really frustrates me, right? I don't adhere to a monolith of thought. When Bob hit me up and he was like, you know, I'm interested if you're interested in jumping on Globebuster show. I was like, yeah, sure. He never said, but you got to think this and this and this, right? I don't do that. I don't adhere to a monolith of that. That includes the Flat Earth debate crowd or any other crowd. They're not going to intimidate me into a monolith of or thought. That's the very thing I despise. I vehemently oppose it, right? I think it's the death of intellectual productivity, right? And so this is what's so ironic. It's the same thing with the ether, right? It's the same thing with this phenomena right here. If established definitively, it objectively dismantles the globe. Not that it's needed, right? Because we've already proven that the globe Earth is wrong. We've already falsified it and proven that the Earth is flat. But the point is, if this is in fact, which it is, electrostatic acceleration, incoherent dielectric acceleration, that dismantles all their claims, bro. They claim that as the mass gets bigger, it gets real strong. And that's how you have all these spheres orbiting around each other. So they've actually inverted the very phenomena, right? So this is like a huge weapon in the arsenal of flat Earth that's being overlooked. And it's not just being overlooked.
That's demonstrable. That's demonstrable.
It's being fought.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and that is the biggest thing. We can demonstrate that, guys. That video of Zach's demonstrates it in spades, hands down. And, you know, going back to what you were saying earlier, it's like when I first found Austin, I was a moderator on the official Flat Earth and Globe discussion group. And I would see his posts come across, you know, often. And I watched like one of them and I was immediately hooked. And I thought, this guy really, you know, knows what he's talking about. I didn't agree with 100% of everything he said, but, you know, most of it resonated very deeply. And when I asked him to join Globebusters, it certainly wasn't with any condition of you got to think the way, you know, I think or anybody else thinks. In fact, that is the last thing in the world that I want. That's the whole reason that I like Austin. He's got a mind of his own. And believe me, if I think he's wrong, I'll be more than happy to go to the mat with him, right? Exactly. And we've had these discussions. I'm not afraid of going to the mat with him or Jaron or anybody else. And, you know, sometimes you just got to say, okay, well, we're going to agree to disagree. And other times we can actually get things resolved. But yeah, no, just because Austin's a Globebuster doesn't mean that, you know, he's in a club where we all have to think the same. That's ludicrous. Now, I unfortunately, I can't say the same about other groups out there from what I've seen, but whatever.
Yeah. And like, that's what's so beautiful. That's why I accepted it. Like if you had reached out to me with if you had been like, here's the list of our talking points that we open the show with every day, and you cannot go against any of these, I wouldn't have even thought twice about it, right? But it was the fact that I knew that I was going to get to talk to informed, smart people and bounce my ideas off, right? Because I consider it iron sharpening iron. That's what intrigued me. That's why I immediately was like, oh yeah, I'm down. Because like, that's what we should all want to do. We should, just like Bob said, if he disagrees with me, he immediately says what he disagrees with me. If Jaron disagrees with us, he immediately says what he disagrees with. And anyone that says that isn't the case, they just haven't even watched Globebusters. It happens every single time. There's a spectrum of opinion on every subject we cover almost, right? So that's the way it should be. And you're justifying people saying, oh, flat Earth's an echo chamber or a monolith of thought when you shut people out like that. I think it's very detrimental. So this is my productive criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So yeah, that's pretty much, you know, what I thought of what went on tonight. And hopefully Brian will, you know, think about what was said and, you know, actually address the things that we're talking about here. And not ask silly questions like, you know, do gravimeters occur in nature? That's I can't even respond to that. That's just a ridiculous question to even ask, right? But you know, all this will do is make our argument stronger, and we all are on the same team, right? So yeah, Austin, if we want to take questions, you don't have to super chat. Just, you know, throw questions at us or anything like that. We'll be happy to you know, answer questions.
Right. I got one right here, Mr. Anderson. So those results that show different acceleration and locations, has the magnetic field been tested and correlated at those locations, stronger where the acceleration increased? Question mark. Do you want to take that one, or I'll take it, doesn't matter?
No, I'll take it. Yes. And now here's the interesting thing about this. There are, not only are there gravitational anomalies, but there are also magnetic and electrical anomalies. And almost every single time, if you look at data sheets that address this, wherever there is a gravitational anomaly, 99 times out of 100, there is also a magnetic anomaly. Why? Because they're all the same thing. They're all, you know, gravity, electricity, and magnetism are all, you know, three heads of the same beast, if you will. They're just different modalities of the ether, if you will. Okay, so to have a correspondence between a magnetic anomaly and a gravitational anomaly shouldn't be surprising at all, because after all, we're talking about the same thing, right? So they definitely do correlate, and they have been tested over and over and over again. And like I said, those instruments, the gravimeters, you know, those are $40,000 little, you know, just the little portable ones are $40,000. The big ones, I don't even know what those things cost. But, you know, when they give you an accuracy down to 10 to the negative 12th in precision, that's insane. I mean, wow. So yeah, absolutely, Mr. Anderson, is definitely tested and correlated for sure.
Right, and of course, I would say there's a whole bunch of factors, right? Like the actual composition of the Earth itself that you're above. And actually, the gravimeter basically debunks their nonsensical claims about gravity being relative to mass and actually increasing proportionate to the increase in mass, because it shows that where the mountains are, like we covered on Globebusters a couple weeks ago, like it's weaker where the mountains are, where it should actually be greater. So again, I think this is an underutilized tool for flat Earth, and maybe we should step back and reconsider as a whole, you know?
Yeah, and that surprised me, because I mean, if gravity did indeed correlate to mass, then you would expect to see, you know, when you see the big mountain chains, the Rocky Mountains, or, you know, any of the other big chains of mountains, you would expect to see large gravitational increases there as well. But in fact, it's almost the opposite is true. And isn't that amazing? Because just like the incoherent dielectric magnetism example that we gave in Zach's video, the same thing seems to be happening. In other words, the more mass, it seems like, well, there's less gravity there, less gravitational attraction. What's up with that, science? And, you know, we're also getting ready to do this experiment with Zach, and I've mentioned this several times, and hopefully we'll be able to do it this spring. But, you know, we've got these balls all rigged up to do the experiment that the engineer, the Lockheed engineer, I forgot his name off the top of my head, did, where basically you've got two balls that weigh exactly the same. They are shaped the same. They're aerodynamically the same. One of them just has a bunch of dead weight in it, and the other one has, Boyd Bushman is the guy's name, and the other one has two neodymium magnets, high-powered neodymium magnets that are forced together with the two poles opposing each other, right? And the idea is, if magnetism and the ether and gravity are all, you know, intrinsically joined together, then when you start manipulating local fields of high magnetic intensity, that's probably going to manipulate the gravitational field. Now, according to the engineer Boyd Bushman from Lockheed Martin, he said that every single time that he did these drop tests, that the ball with the magnets in it came down considerably after the one with just the rocks in it. You know, same exact weight, same aerodynamics, absolutely identical across the board, except for the magnets. So what does that say? That says that something is going on where the magnet is actually creating an interference with the gravity, right? And making it, for whatever reason, not pull as strong and not accelerate as quickly. So that's where we're going to be going with that.
That's
But
awesome.
again,
That's awesome. And like, think about it. One side's going and trying to figure it out with practical demonstrations and experiments. One side's not. So it's obvious where I stand on that one. And again, when he says gravity, we're talking about something different than what people commonly associate with it, right? But static, electrostatics, dielectric acceleration when it falls, and then the magnetic field that will be coherent, of course, incredibly coherent, right? Because they're neodymium iron boron magnets, I believe, right?
mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So that's going to cause an interference. It's going to affect it. Now, if the magnetic affects it, bye-bye their claim of gravity. Have you looked at the Russian documents that study the firmament? Yeah, they tested the efficacy of approximation of the brightness of the firmament, and it says in the declassified documents that their approximation methods were proven to be accurate. So, yeah, not quite what we're talking about.
And I have all of those documents, by the way, every single one of them, all the government documents, which I have put on a link on the Globebuster shows in which we talked about it. Which one it was, I don't know, but if anybody ever wants those, I'd be more than happy to reach out to me, send me an email at bnodell@fecor.org, and I'll be more than happy to send you the link to the G drive with all those government documents in it.
Sweet. Bob, do you agree the ground is negatively charged and the firmament is positively charged?
Yeah, actually. But now the interesting thing is, I would say so because earth ground is always typically related to, being negative, right? And I would say that the firmament, it would obviously have to be the positively charged thing, but then you get different gradients. And, when you're dealing specifically with things like sprites and elves, when you have like lightning discharges that are actually discharging up towards the atmosphere, that means that, with respect to the firmament or with respect to ground, sometimes that doesn't always seem to hold true. In other words, it's a relative thing sometimes, but overall, I would say Earth is ground and negative, and the firmament at 100 kilometers or 62 miles, I believe, is positively charged.
Right, which is, we don't necessarily we don't like hide from the fact some of this is inherently speculative, right? But I would say the Earth maybe operates a lot like a ring magnet, and then it comes out, the firmament comes down and touches the ground. And then this makes a lot of sense with how cold it is on the potential edges, and of course the amount of salt that's in the water increases in concentration there. I'm trying to look through some of these. Could you help explain the Northern Lights? Whoa, what a question.
Well, Northern Lights, same thing. There is a collection of noble gases that are there. And what's happening is that is the magnetic north field. It's a very, very intense field. And when you get those noble gases that are accumulating in that area, because it's just over the polar regions, it will fluoresce them. Just like that Dan Dimension video I showed earlier, at the beginning of this podcast, same exact thing is happening. So you get these gases that are the noble gases, which are the lightest gases, like going up to xenon and neon and all this stuff. And they go really high up in the atmosphere. They get under the influence of not only the sun's charge that it is throwing out, but they also get into the Earth's magnetic field, and they are influenced by that. And that is actually what is giving you those aurora borealis northern lights. Now, I have never seen, they claim that this phenomenon happens at the South Pole, and I'm not sure what to think about that. It may be possible, but if Austin's right and it is a type of ring magnet, then that phenomenon would also be possible in Antarctica. However, my wife Cammie, the way she's looking at this, we're actually looking at a quadrupole type of system that's here, and one of those poles would be out, I think, in the middle of the Atlantic. Possibly in an area that we are not allowed to navigate to, potentially. And I don't want to screw that up too bad, but there's a couple of different possibilities.
I will say, I am leaning that way pretty heavily. That there's a fourth convergence of the magnetic field, and of course you have to have two poles, right? So you would have to have an additional point that logically would have to have land to sustain the fourth convergence point to have a quadrupole, which is very interesting, I would say.
Yeah, it is. And the interesting thing is it seems to form when she does this magnetic configuration under a ferrocell, right? She can actually set these magnets up in a pillars like Joaquin and Boaz, the big pillars. And if she sets the magnets up in that configuration, she actually can create that quadrupole design and that quadrupole manifestation that we get when we actually look at the magnetic Earth field, right? Astounding. But I mean, and almost to the gnat's ass, it's right on the money. It's incredible.
We're gonna ruffle some feathers here, but someone asked, said particles ? So you want to take particles? It? Yeah, like basically asking about what do we think about particles? I'll just say what I think. The claim of the material nature of subatomic particles, I think, is pseudoscience, and it comes from the idea of needing to quantify everything, but you simply cannot quantify the immaterial. They've had to throw out the background medium because of heliocentrism, which means they're in the confinement of just the material world alone. So they're trying to explain different types of pressure mediation and energy phenomena that we're observing on the small scale and fit it into, basically, as Bob likes to say, bean counting and trying to assume a material nature of particles. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I know what you're talking about too. And yeah, particles, no, we're talking about quantum mechanics here, right? Because quantum mechanics, it's about quantifying things. If you can't count it, then you can't quantify it, and it doesn't fit into that science, right? But there are lots of things that simply cannot be quantified, and that would be the etheric field. For example, when they talk about photons or light particles, actually what those are they are very quick time intervals of induction of stimulus into the luminiferous ether, okay? And when you do that at a short enough burst or a short enough charge potential, then they call that, oh, okay, there's that little thing and there's a particle, right? But that's not what's happening at all. And also, when you get away from the idea of bean counting, then you can start explaining other things like, how can the speed of light travel through the air at 186,282 miles per second, and then it goes through water like a fish tank, and it drops down to about 60% of that, or 0.6 C, right? But when it exits out the other side of that fish tank, then it goes back up to full speed of 186,282. Well, obviously, if light is a particle, then you're breaking the a law of conservation of momentum, right? That can't happen under the current model of photons as light, right? But if it is induction of the ether, then once the medium changes, then the induction goes back to its normal speed outside of that water medium, right? So there you have it. It really does solve a lot. The ether solves everything. Really,
I agree. Another real big issue, a phenomena that you simply cannot explain without acknowledging an ether, whatever you want to call it. Like we know the width span of a magnetic field, right? And so we take a neodymium boron iron magnet, and then we can take one of those old school TVs, and they can be like 80 yards, 100 yards away. But this magnetic field is only supposed to go out a certain amount of feet. And if you actually take the magnet and you move it, introducing motion, a vector to it, it will go all the way to that TV, and it will affect the static nature of it. It will actually make the TV like fluctuate the way that it looks. So how is that happening if there's no medium to carry the ripples of the magnetism?
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck explaining that one.
Yeah, much is explained when you introduce the ether back into the equation. And it's not like the ether is new. It's not. In fact, the pioneers of electrical engineering, the Ken Wheeler is always so fond of talking about, absolutely understood this, and the nature of the ether itself. And because of the fact that we were, advancing very quickly, once we began to understand that, they had to slow things down, not only so it would stop from the demolition of the idea that the Earth is flat and stationary, but mostly stationary, right? Because, Einstein had to introduce his special law of relativity in response to the Michelson-Morley experiment, which said straight up, hey, you know what, you got a problem here because we are not, the results here are saying that we are not moving, right? So basically they introduced Einstein with this hocus pocus bullshit, theory to not only combat that off, the idea that we weren't on a, ball that was rocketing through space at 67,000 miles an hour, but it also stopped a lot of advancement in technologies because simply we're on a wild goose chase. We're chasing the wrong model. We're looking at electricity in entirely the wrong way. And it has really, really interfered with us. And of course, the elite know about it, and they're keeping all of this technology, hidden for themselves. And I'm sure someday we'll see it, but not in a good way.
Right. I agree. I think it's also a very interesting little thing that it was the luminiferous, which is the light-bearing ether, and then they're light-bearer worshippers. Cami says when you place the two pillars or dipoles correctly, the stairway or the quadrupole appears, which is quite interesting. We got another question here. In the experiment you showed where the paper lifted up, how can we confirm whether it is defying a downward force or creating an upward force? It's just showing that the introduction of electrostatics will actually affect directionality. Would you want to expand any more than that?
Well, honestly, it is not defying the downward force. The downward force is going to remain there regardless. It is creating an upward force because we are introducing a new variable, a new static charge into the equation here. So it's not, it's not defying it, so to speak. It is just simply creating a more powerful variant of that force that is in the upward vector.
Well said. Basically, you're replicating it only stronger, and if that's up above, which is causing it to counter and overpower the downward bias.
Yep. There you have it. Cool.
Yeah. Where do particles go after they enter your eye? I've never been hit in the eye with particles, bro. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that they were kind of joking about that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I don't think we're getting bombarded. And not only that, they tell us that the particle type of radiation is lethal, right? It's not good to have that kind of radiation. So whatever. So yeah, the idea that all light would be, this actual physical particles, or the oxymoronic, ridiculous statement, particles without mass. It's like, come on, man. How can you have a particle that has no mass, right? How can it actually be a little tiny bit of matter and have no mass? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is what's so crazy. I find it so perplexing when flat earthers try to confine their stance into modern academia that's been wrong about so much and ignore that the background was thrown out just because of the allegiance pledged to heliocentrism. It's kind of wild, right? Like it doesn't make sense. And like you said, they say that they're matter, but they're not actually mass. And then this kind of ties into, well, they've lied via academia and their control about what magnetism even is. And people think magnetism is simply a coherent magnet, and that's it, right? Most people don't even know anything about incoherent magnetism. And then you combine these two confinements, and now they say that magnetism is the exchange of virtual photons. So when you kick back against the incoherent magnetism that we know exists here, you're implicitly standing on this side that's just saying things full of lunacy, like magnetism is virtual photons. What does that even mean? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, bro.
It really is. I mean, the level of desperation that they get to, it just kills me. Especially when you get to things like how they image outer space or how they image supposed black holes. The level to which they reach is beyond belief. And of course, I've done a lot of shows on Globebusters covering stuff like this. But I mean, it's gotten to the point now where any scientific mainstream media outlet can say anything they want. It doesn't matter, and everybody will just eat it up, no matter how ridiculous or how much poppycock it is. The mainstream just buys it up. And if they don't, then what do? Then all of a sudden, oh, you're just as stupid as a flat earther, and they get ridiculed and they get fired from their jobs, and all the same stuff that we as flat earthers go through. And I honestly can't blame a lot of people for not wanting to go through that, but it's just unfortunate that that's the way it is. But that is the tactic, and that is how they battle us, right? They take away our very livelihoods, our self-esteem, everything. They try and strip from us because we have a belief, and not only just a belief, but evidence for a reality that is different from what's put forth in the mainstream.
Yeah, we got a secret king in the chat. Quantum physics is way too complex for flat Earth. which of course you obviously don't understand anything about it. But feel free with your next comment to explain to me what a virtual particle is, what a virtual photon is, how light can slow down in a change of medium without breaching the law of conservation of energy, and then explain instantaneous action at a distance for me. Then explain why they're walking it back and introducing quantum field theory. And once you explain all those, we'll see who is lacking the understanding.
Oh, it's that Mike Fox guy. He's a what an idiot. Flat Earth still did not master general relativity. No, and I hope we never do, Mike Fox, because general relativity is horseshit. Complete, straight up bullshit. And you pushing it, you obviously have no clue and have not looked into it yourself. So, you know, and what's with you, dude? Why do I see you in every single Flat Earth chat? You know, who do you work for? I mean, what the hell is your interest in this? You know, you're in every Flat Earth chat. You're nothing but a troll. You know, you speak out all kinds of nonsense, and you come with insults and everything else, but yet you're in every single freaking chat. What is your problem, dude?
Yeah, so of course, there's no sound. This guy's going to get blocked, just so you know. You're in the wrong saloon. But I'm going to give you one chance because you're going to fail. But what you need to do is explain or answer this question directly. And if you do not, and you continue to troll my chat, you're just going to get blocked. You're in the wrong saloon, dude. So can you explain how general relativity attempts to reify conceptual abstractions? So my question for you is, can conceptual abstractions have physical properties? And if you don't answer directly, you're just going to get blocked. So there you go. That's how you get rid of the secret kings. You just put their feet to the fire. They run away. Yeah, and notice he uses the cigarette smoking man as from the X-Files, right, as his little icon. It's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, you know, can you be any more obvious? Unbelievable. Yeah, the funny part, like you said, like he's a flat earth groupie. Like they go around claiming flat earth is so stupid, but they stalk flat earth channels. Like, what a bunch of weirdos. Yeah, and this is exactly why I have zero tolerance for people like that. You know, dude, don't even bother coming to Glowbusters. You'll be banned the first comment you make. I can promise you that. Tell Bill if he ever eat a radioactive sandwich made by Black. Yeah. See you, Mike Fox. Thank you. Or hit you on the way out. What a loser. I know. Absolutely unbelievable. But yes, and these, again, people, there's a good possibility that this guy is a hired, you know, gun, so to speak, even though most of them are morons, you know, to come in here and disrupt things and say, oh, yeah, quantum physics is way too complicated for flat earthers to understand. No, I don't think so. And, you know, maybe it's too complicated for you to understand. But most people do realize that Einstein was an idiot, and there is nothing about his special relativity that stands up in most applied physics today. No, we can go on for days. What's wrong with that, right? Special relativity, which is where he attributed constant speed to light. Well, that's not true. Light's not a traveling particle from point A to point B. It's an ether perturbation modality of derivation of state. Like he said, you have an induction rate, right? So it's being induced into the ether. You have an illumination rate. And this is the simple way I put it for people, the way I see it. And I'm not sure, Bob, maybe you can give your opinion if you agree with how I'm putting this, but your eyes can only perceive a certain vibration. We know this definitively, right? We can only perceive a certain vibration. Well, when you excite the medium by introducing energy, what you're seeing is a certain vibration of the medium that's already there that has become perceivable. So all it's doing is making the medium itself perceivable because of the vibration causing illumination. That's absolutely correct. And the same works for all of our senses. Same for smell, same for hearing. Hearing, it's just the same exact concept, except it's in the audible frequency ranges. And of course, the medium takes place in the air itself, right? Or water or whatever. But, you know, when you're talking about light does not need an air medium. Light propagates just fine in the vacuum because that's where the ether is. And yes, so when the ether is vibrated, it then responds by vibrating at a frequency that is within the detection range of the retina, the eye, right? There it is. So all of our senses work the same way. Sense of smell, sight, taste, touch, all of it. How's this guy even still in here? I don't know. Oh, because he's a troll. He's uses all these freaking accounts, and he just keeps coming. Yeah, keep coming back, Mike Foss. We'll just keep banning you. You know, you're just a clown, man. You're just a clown. Like, dude, guys, just for all the people at home, I do have some globe earthers I like in here. I won't say anyone's name. There's a couple people that they think the Earth's a globe somehow, but I think they'll come around. I don't just want flat earthers here or whatever, but people like this little gamma male is obviously not allowed here, just attracting. But just for those people that I'm trying to kind of get to realize how unfounded and preposterous their stance is, that there's a ball that defies physics, just think about it without bias. These people are so infatuated with some college dropout talking on on camera, rambling, that they'll make like all these different accounts going and trolling and stalking all the flat earthers while simultaneously claiming that they're stupid. That doesn't make any sense, right? So you should not want to, you don't want to be on that side, is what I'm saying. Like, just kind of think about it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and if you think you're intimidating us, Mr. Mike Fox, you're sadly mistaken. We know we have the winning argument, and we know exactly why you're here and what you're doing here, and you don't faze us. It sucks that you are working to betray humanity, but hey, that's what you got to do. Whatever, right?
Right.
So, all right. So anyway, wow, what else to say about that? I just wish that at some point, we can come together on this, because really we don't have that many major disagreements. I mean, I'd say probably one of the other major disagreements that takes place among flat earthers is the map, right? The Gleason's AE map. You have some people that like FPV Angel and other people that actually make a decent case, even though some of it's a little bizarre in my opinion, for the, I guess what you could call is the Pac-Man map, right? At least it's interesting and it's creative thinking, but I personally don't subscribe to it. But I do appreciate that some people are willing to think outside the box and consider possibilities that would seem otherwise absurd to other people. At least they're making an attempt, and I have to respect that, But other than that, I don't think that there's a whole lot of major points of contention among flat earthers.
No, I agree. I like to, I hate that. I feel like it shouldn't have to be done, but basically this is an extension of whatever you want to call it, right? Like moderate mediation, whatever you want to call it. But like, we're all on the same team, and I think that it's very off-putting to the person new to the subject to hear a very dogmatic approach. So we should just encourage, like, I'm not going to say any names, but we all have ideas of people pop up, like screaming and talking about how we're stupid, and you're a flat earther. You're a flat earther. Supposedly you're interested in getting the truth out while we're being censored into oblivion. And many of us that show our actual face and our actual identity, and everyone knows who we are, we're taking all kinds of bullets and death threats and crazy stuff, trying to get the truth out. And you claim to be on the same side as us. I would probably ask you to pump the brakes on like ad homs and calling names and talking crazy and talking about how stupid we are, because that makes no sense. And it seems like maybe that isn't your intention, right? So again, we're figuring things out, and we've been censored into oblivion. We've been indoctrinated into oblivion, and it's a process, and we're going to have to piece these things together, piece observable phenomena back together. And the only way that that's going to happen is if people can have free exchanges without some dogmatic, like religious approach. This is the very thing that we claim to be opposing, was like the religious doctrine and dogmatic approach of the globe earth and higher academia and all this stuff. Yet some people seem to carry that with them, right? And so like, I have the utmost respect for all the people that go and like constantly every day try and wake people up, right? So the fact that we may disagree on a few things, they're minor in the grand scheme of things, and I would encourage people to try to do what's right, see the bigger picture, not attack each other with animosity and divide over it, right? Like, just disagree on minor issues, talk it out, have productive conversations, but we're still on the same team, and we're fighting against majority of the world. So the last thing we need to do is just like vehemently attack one another, right? Exactly. And there's another thing that I don't like either, and again, there are people that are out there fighting the good fight, putting up good argument, but things that I don't like to hear are things like, well, how do my nuts taste after a point is made. I'm sorry, part of that's funny on one level, but really you have to think about how that impacts somebody that's a new observer coming in and saying, here's somebody losing his mind and then asking how his nuts taste. And
that's, it's just not cool, I don't think. But, to each his own, whatever. And people, there are people out there that don't like my style either, people are saying, oh, you're too aggressive in chat, it's like, well, whatever. And I noticed that apparently every one of my comments has been deleted out of tonight's chat. So I can only imagine who that was that did that. But I no longer show up in there anymore. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Like I said, anyone that tries to attest that like Bob is a legend within the community and has done a ton, you're just stupid, right? And again, I'm trying to be as vague and respectful as I can here because I don't want to stoop down to other people's levels. But if you don't show your face and you don't show your identity, and I really don't take anything you say about people that do that very seriously. And that's how I feel. And I know people like my homie Nathan, right? Like he says the same thing, right? You can't please all the flat earthers, and the ones that have the most vocal opinions are typically the ones that hide behind anonymity. Don't get me wrong. I understand some people have to because of their professions and stuff like that. But it's just like maybe pump the brakes. Like there are some people going out there putting their very like livelihood and reputation on the front line for what you claim to want done ultimately too. It's just very distasteful. It's actually kind of disheartening. I don't understand it. I truly don't understand it. So people need to maybe grow up. Right. And again, I don't want to like get on my preaching monologues, but I just think that this is a thing that I hate to see. Right. And I disagree with many people on many things, but it's okay. It's okay to disagree. We don't have to all think the same thing. We just need to be respectful and get the truth out there. And if we don't, maybe that's what they want to happen, right? They would love to see nothing more than the little minority group that is flat earth get divided into a bunch of groups, right? That's what they want. So we don't need to fall into those traps, and people maybe need to swallow their pride and walk back some of the things that they've said and done. And if we can all do that, then maybe we'll be able to take more substantial, productive steps forward. All right, I'll stop monologuing. I'll stop preaching.
Yeah, well said, actually. So, and I agree with you 100%, but like you said, everybody has their own style and not everybody appreciates everybody else. And, it is what it is, but tearing ourselves apart from the inside out is not going to help our message at all. So
agreed.
Let's just try and do better. So there you have it.
Well, Bob, you got anything else you want to say? Cause I'm starving. So,
yeah, no, I'm good. Actually, we had a second Thanksgiving dinner tonight because Cammie bought a frozen turkey and a fresh turkey, and we had the fresh one for Thanksgiving. And so she goes, well, I better cook that other turkey. So she cooked that other turkey, and now we have like Thanksgiving leftovers for the next week. So life is good here. So I'm hungry.
Sounds like it. I'm about to go eat some sushi. Not nearly as good as Thanksgiving food, but I'll make do.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, thanks for having me on. And I'm, hopefully, if that side wants to discuss this more, I'm open to that, but honestly, I sometimes wonder if these discussions shouldn't take place more in private, because I think when it's done in public like this, that egos really get to be at stake, and maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. It's a thought.
Yeah, I agree. I agreed to do it. I don't want to keep necessarily doing it. I think that this had kind of boiled up to the top where maybe that, we needed to kind of address it as a community together in a way. But like you said, maybe it's better done like in private or in a Discord server or in Skype calls where people can't all hear it, because we should all put our egos aside and worry about, focus on the bigger goal here.
Yeah. And again, if anybody has any idea, the video that Sleeping Warrior, he claims that I've seen it, but I haven't. I stopped watching him well over a year ago, so I really don't know what video this is, but I gather it has something to do with his buoyancy and density argument, whatever. Please send it to me or send me a link to it, and I would appreciate that greatly, because I'll watch it and I'll actually address it live on Globebusters if I knew which one it was, because I have no idea which one it is. So there you have it. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Go get something to eat, and we will see you guys on Sunday for Globebusters.
Yes, sir. Much love, bro.
All right. Take it easy, man. Love you.
All right. I guess we'll do some housekeeping real fast. I'm starving, guys. Sorry, I just got to wrap it up. I got $5 on Cash App from James. Thank you very much. I think that's all we got on Cash App. Let's see. 5 new Patreons in the last week or so. We got Blake, Jackie, Anix, Kelly, Redford Bear. I think I shouted a bunch of those out already. Thank you very much. I actually don't know how to maneuver this very well to see all the Patreons. I'll shout y'all all out soon, though. Much appreciated on all the Patreons. Good way to reach me. It's like you can just use $5. I'm not trying to bribe you. It's just there's only 16 people on here, so I can check my messages a lot better than the hundreds of messages I have on Messenger, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just double check PayPal, make sure nothing's on here. I don't think there is, though. All right, we're good. I don't see any super chats, so we should be good. So yeah, if you want to support Cash App, Patreon, XRP, PayPal, all the links are in the description. If you want to contact me, Whitsitt a Proton Mail. Also, if you are a Patreon, you can message me on there. And I'll make sure I try to get to all my emails. I've been catching up on them. And yeah, there you go. I always say, seek and speak truth unequivocally. Don't let people shy you away from it. Weak people always get together, typically in anonymity. They throw rocks because they're little gamma males. Don't ever cuck to people like that. And yeah, until next time, I'll catch up with y'all later. Peace.
That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting, say they high, say they sipping pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in the field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it. If news ain't good informant to informing them, there's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we port in ships, important gifts. Of course it is, but extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting, say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?